Hello, everybody, and welcome to the HR Exchange Network. Now, before we kick off with our third session of Corporate Learning Spring, just a quick reminder. Now, if you did miss any of our sessions that have gone prior to this one, don't worry. Those sessions are available for you to rewatch on demand for up to a month. And before we get underway, just to outline what you can see there on your console, because it's super toggle friendly, I want you to be able to take full control of what you can see. First and foremost, that resource center, okay? All that material is free for you to download, so we do suggest you take advantage of that. And we equally have that Q&A widget there on the left-hand side. So any questions that you do have for Rashim, pop it into that box, and I'll get round to asking those questions at the end. And you'll also see Rashim's profile bio, LinkedIn URL there on the right-hand side. So feel free to connect on LinkedIn and carry the conversation on after today. Today we're going to be talking about the road to that transformative leadership approach through building, coaching and reinforcing. And I'm delighted to be joined by Rashim Mogha, Skillsoft General Manager for Leadership and Business Portfolio. So Rashim, thank you very much for joining us here today. And over to you to kick us off to give a little bit more insight about yourself and your role to date.
Thank you so much, Ree. And as I talk about my career journey and as I think about it, I've been at companies like NIIT, VMware, Amazon Web Services, Oracle, and Automation Anywhere. I've been a business and technology leader for about 20 years and have led high-performing teams. And now this slide is a great demonstration of the successes that I've had in past couple of years. What it doesn't tell, though, is the learning opportunities and the failures that I've had as a leader and as a manager in this journey. I remember that as a first-time manager, I failed multiple times. And if I wouldn't have had the right guidance and coaching at that time, I would never be where I am today. What it also doesn't tell you is the challenges that I had to deal with as a woman in technology, a woman of color specifically in this Silicon Valley, and the challenges that I had to deal with. It doesn't tell you how many times I had to overcome imposter syndrome every time I was in a new role or had a new opportunity. It also doesn't tell you that as a first-time manager, there was no way that I could articulate what my team was doing into the business initiatives that my company was eyeing for that year. So while this career journey is great, there is so much under the hood that I want to talk about today and unfold as we talk about what does transformative leadership look like, and how do we ensure that we are building leaders that not only have the knowledge, but also have the confidence to use that knowledge in their everyday work so they are successful as leaders. Now, the benefit that I have sitting where I am right now as the GM for Leadership and Business Portfolio at Skillsoft, leading their product, their content, and their professional services and other services to deliver those key experiences, compelling customer experiences, is that I get an opportunity to talk to leaders across the globe about their key strategic initiatives. And every time I've spoken to them, I've asked them, what do businesses need to thrive today? What are your key initiatives? What are you focusing on? And I don't just talk to HR leaders. I talk to business leaders. I talk to technology leaders. And in the last couple of years, the key themes that have emerged, business initiatives that have emerged, are digital transformation, their customer centricity. People talk about diversity a lot in those conversations. And the words that often come up in those conversations are innovation, agility, and culture. I've had leaders talk to me about, Rashim, the biggest challenge that I have is how do I tie these initiatives together? I know that we have to embark on a journey of digital transformation. Without that, we would not be successful as an organization. And we all know that in COVID, in this pandemic, what we have learned is that we have to be agile and nimble, right? If there's anything that we have learned is how to be agile, how to be nimble, how to transform overnight to be successful as a business. And then customer centricity, because that's such a key piece of how your products and your services resonate with the customers. And then alongside, how do we bring diversity so that there's not just diversity in terms of, people of different genders, races, ethnicity in my workforce, but also there's diversity of thought. There's diversity in the solutions that we build. And in those conversations, we often talk about 3 pillars that help achieve these key business initiatives. And those 3 key pillars are technology, process, and people. And coming from the cloud computing industry and robotic process automation, we often get into this discussion around, what is most important in this pillar. And in the past, what has happened is that organizations, especially after they started embarking this journey to digital transformation, have focused more on technology than on people. And that's why we are not where we need to be when it comes to digital transformation. And in last 2 years, what the organizations have realized is that actually people is the most important component in these 3 pillars of people, process, and technology to get to any initiative that we are talking about in an organization. So I would like to open up the first poll over here, Ree, if you don't mind, and let's see what our audience has to say about these 3 initiatives.
Sure, let's do it. So as Rashim has just mentioned there, those 3 initiatives, diversity, digital transformation, and customer centricity, do they align with your corporate priorities? Vote now. I think from my stance, general consensus would be, let's hope so, Rashim, but what do you think the votes will be here from our audience?
I think it would be also important for the audience to look for not just these 3 key terms, if you will, but are there other terms that tie into these initiatives, like culture for diversity, like innovation for digital transformation, for customer centricity, agility, NPS, nimbleness. So I would love to see what our audience says about this.
Let's have a look. Okay, so roughly 77% would say yes, that those 3 initiatives do align, but still that's 23% that say no. So there's still some work to be done there.
Yes, and I would be curious, I don't know, Reed, this is going to be impromptu, but can people type in, if they're saying no, what key initiatives their companies are focusing on? Or
yeah.
I would love to see that input as well.
Yeah, audience, feel free, drop into that Q&A widget and hit submit those initiatives that you are focusing on if they don't fall under that umbrella that we've just mentioned there. Good point, Rashim. So as the audience do come back to us on those Q&A points, we can follow up with that at the end if you want.
Awesome. So if nothing, like, I'm curious to see if the audience that said that culture, diversity, and customer centricity are not their key initiatives today, I would love to see if people is their key initiative or not, because we all have realized that in last couple of years, organizations' perspective on leadership has changed. Today, organizations expect everyone to be a leader. It doesn't matter whether you are a leader of people, whether you're a leader of products, or you're leaders of your business. But the reality is that everyone is a leader, but not everyone leads, right? We know that in the first year, ineffective leadership leads to about 30% talent turnover. It's either those new leaders getting frustrated that they're not able to perform as a leader, or the teams reporting to them get frustrated because they are not performing as a leader. And as a result, there's a talent turnover. There's also 8% revenue loss that's associated to poor and ineffective leadership. And that's a huge number when you start looking at Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. Now, on the flip side, better leadership can generate 3 to 4% improvement in customer satisfaction and could eliminate 5 to 10% of productivity drag. Now, these are huge numbers that we are talking about over here. And that's why it's important to understand, why do leaders fail, right? Because these are huge numbers that we are talking about. What if we could turn every leader to be an effective leader, and hence bring these numbers to a different level altogether in terms of companies' performance, in terms of attrition, in terms of revenue? So before I proceed, let's do a quick poll to understand if our attendees who are in here today have attended a leadership development program or not.
And just going back actually to that slide, Rashim, that was really interesting stats here, how that actually the retention can affect the customer experience. So it's aligned EX with CX, and really we need to be focusing on that leadership development, as you mentioned. So audience, please vote now. I would like to think that the majority of you have attended a leadership development program, but there may be a general consensus that the answer is no here. What do you find on the whole, Rashim, when you're speaking with clients and potential clients here?
So as I speak with the customers and my network, almost everybody has attended some form of leadership development program. It can be a workshop that they attended, a 5-day workshop, or it could be a curated online program that was crafted for them. So everybody that I have come across has had some kind of experience with the leadership development program, because the whole concept of leadership development is not new. It's it has been there in the industry for quite some time. Now, effectiveness of those leadership development programs is a completely different conversation, which we are going to talk about later.
So let's have a look. Yeah, so
yes.
Nice. 82% have. Great. And for those that haven't yet, let's look at that actual niche then, and what does need to be addressed within those leadership programs.
Yeah. So let's quickly move on to the next poll that we have, Ree, because here comes the effectiveness of those programs. Did the program actually prepare you for a leadership role? And when I say leadership, I truly mean leadership, and not just a manager role, a true leadership role. So let's see what our attendees have to say over here.
Yeah, audience, vote now, because, I mean, it really does depend on what you personally define as leadership. And leaders and managers, as you've alluded to, are very different. So, and it seems to be that driving the leaders of the future is so topical right now. It's the number one priority for retention. So audience, please vote. Let's have a look at the answers. But do you feel the general consensus is that these programs or development courses are preparing?
Mine did not prepare me, and that's what we are going to talk about. So I'm going to see what others say. I have a comment from Deborah over here. Could this be a leadership development course outside of the organization? Yes, it could be.
Okay.
Let's see what the results are.
Ooh.
Okay. So that's, and people are still voting, but we are seeing a trend over here, Ree, if you can, right?
Yeah.
That is that most of the audience has actually attended a leadership development program, but majority of the audience feels like that it did not prepare them for a leadership role. And here I'm going to actually share my personal story. So as I mentioned, when I started talking about my career, as I mentioned, I worked for various companies like NIIT, VMware, AWS, Oracle. And as I joined these companies, I understood that each of them actually aligned and had a leadership development methodology that they followed. Every year, I would be sent as a high-performing team member being prepared for the executive role. I would be sent for a leadership development program. And those programs were great. These programs were awesome in the sense that they provided that insight that I needed to be able to know myself better. But then I would know my predictive index, I would know red, blue, green colors, but then I would actually come in after those programs and say, that was great, but not all that I learned in that leadership development program actually applies to my current role. And then in a few months, we would get together as a cohort and we would share our experiences with each other, and the same thing would pop up again. The program was great. There were a lot of learning moments. I learned a lot about leadership. I don't know if it relates to my current job or not, whether I can contextualize it, and hence I don't think I'm using it the way I'm supposed to use. So that's why when we started looking at developing a transformative leadership solution, we went a layer below the leadership methodology, because the leadership methodology would keep changing every time I would change companies. Some companies believed in me being an empathetic leader. Other companies wanted me to behave differently as a leader. So what we wanted to do was to understand why leaders really fail or are not successful. And that's because they don't just need the knowledge, but they also need the ability and the confidence to use their knowledge in their everyday work. And they need that contextualization that's required. So basically, when we started thinking about that, we wanted to go a layer deeper in the leadership methodology. And what we wanted to base on is actually what's going on in the leaders as you expose them to these leadership development programs. And what is actually going on over there is that you're trying to bring about a behavioral change. You're basically doing change management within these people and within the organization. So we took inspiration from Prosci-Edgar model and based this on the model of change management. And here are the 5 stages in that change management that we talk about. There's awareness and desire, awareness that you need to change, and an intrinsic desire that you want to change. Second is the knowledge that you need for that competency. Third is the ability. How do you build in that ability? And then reinforcement, which is critical as you're talking about behavioral change. So basically, think about it as a format or a template that you would implement it to bring about that behavioral change that you're looking for in your leaders and also within your organization as you start thinking about building that leadership culture. So awareness and desire, 360-degree assessments are a great way. Skills assessment is a great way to identify what are your blind spots and actually build your functional and power skills. So when I talk about functional and power skills, we're talking about time management, we're talking about project management skills. And then basically what you do is you build your knowledge. How do you build your knowledge? That gap analysis, skills gap analysis that you did, now you take courses to build your knowledge. These could be online courses. These could be VILTs. In case of Skillsoft, we basically have our SLDP, which is Skillsoft Leadership Development Program, which is powered by MIT Sloan Management Review, that we use to build the knowledge. And then basically what do you do is, now the next step is, how does it contextualize for me over here? And that's where the beauty of the program comes in, because then you do a 360-degree assessment where your peers tell you, how is Rashim doing when it comes to negotiation skills? How is Rashim doing in terms of being an inclusive leader? And once I have all that feedback, I can basically sit down with my coach and create an action plan for myself. And then I work with my coach to address all those blind spots that I have uncovered in that 360-degree assessment and work through that. And then repeat that 360 assessment after maybe 6 months to see how I have grown as a leader, because now everybody is providing me that input in a safe environment to let me know where I have grown and where I still need work. And then you reinforce that with role-based journeys that provide you more information and provide you that reinforcement that you need to continue honing those skills. Now, if you notice over here is it's about a 12-month program. And essentially what happens is, when I talk to all the organizations, everybody wants to build that culture of continuous learning. If you look at it, it has continuous learning built into this entire process. Because by the time you come to that 12-month mark, your job responsibilities might have changed, your stakeholders might have changed, and hence what you might get promoted. And hence what you require from a leadership development program and the skills that you need to hone might have changed. So you go back again and do this discovery process again and go through the entire model. And this becomes a culture of continuous learning that's now part of your DNA, because now you're continuously learning, you're honing your skills for the next level and then for the next level. And this is critical because it's very different from that 5-day workshop that I attended and then got together maybe once a month with my cohort to talk about the learnings, because now this provides me a contextualized environment in which I can truly work with somebody and say, how does it reflect in my job role? So when we talk about, for example, a lot of focus nowadays is on diversity, right? As an engineering leader, if I have a coach who can tell me how does diversity of thought show up in leading my engineering teams, it would be a game changer, because then I would be able to think about just not diversity and inclusion from a perspective of, am I giving chance for everybody on my team to speak up as we embark new initiatives, but it's also about providing them that unique opportunity to bring in their ideas and give them an opportunity and psychological safety to test out those ideas in a safe environment and see if it would work for our customers or not. That ability and that kind of coaching is not available in a typical 5-day workshop that you would have. So that's the beauty of this program. And that's why it resonates so much with our audience, because as you start thinking about this program, what you have done is you have not only provided leaders an opportunity to gain knowledge, but have provided them the confidence to use their knowledge in their everyday work. And in the process, you've built a culture, a learning culture in your entire organization. And because this is a scalable model, it doesn't have to be restricted to just a particular layer or just hypos in your organization. This is something that you can roll out today to your entire organization and make it accessible to them. And that's the beauty of this program. So with that, Ree, I would love to open up for any questions that we see in the chat.
Awesome. Let's do it, Rashim. So First and foremost, it's worth asking one question here about the size of a company being roughly 10,000 people, wanting to launch a leadership development program, but unsure which segment of employees to start with. So I guess, what would your suggestions be here in this situation?
Yeah, there are various ways to look at it. Like if you have a talent management process that's already in place, you can look at it from various ways. You can look at it from a perspective of a core group of people who are going to be part of your leadership bench. And you want to look at those high performers, hypos, and you want to move them to the next level. You could start there. The other way to look at it is, if there is a business initiative that you really want to focus on this year, you could pick up a business unit that's going to have the maximum impact on that key initiative, and you can start with that set of leaders. The third way to look at it is, if there is a new layer of management that you are introducing, or if you're focusing on first-time managers this year, you could start with that group. But eventually, you'll have to replicate it and scale it across the organization. And that's how you build that culture of leadership. That's how you build that culture of basically a learning culture in an organization. But you have to start small. And the beauty of the program is that you can customize it, you can look at it differently, and then you can think about how you can learn from each cohort that you launch and implement that, because it's not a waterfall model. It's a very agile, nimble model.
And how can a leadership development program address and also incorporate diversity?
That's a beautiful question. And, when we think about diversity, we have to have a 360-degree view of diversity. It's not just about launching a diversity program and making sure that, your numbers are there where the company expects it to be. It's also about, how does diversity show up in every conversation that I have, in every product that I develop, in the UX, in the CX, right? And that's the conversation that we need to start having. So as leaders, it's not just about me giving an opportunity for everybody to speak in a team meeting, but it's also about, we're thinking about this design that we have built. How does this design appeal to differently abled people? How does this design appeal to a multi-generational workforce? How does this design appeal to my diverse set of customers? I remember not too long ago, I was actually talking to a group of leaders who really wanted to do something in Africa and in India, and bring learning opportunities to people who were who really needed that and were in the low income group in rural parts. And as we start discussing, everybody had a digital solution for it. But guess what? People don't have access to internet in so many places of the world. So how would your digital experience relate to over there? Have you thought about that, right? Have you looked at it from a completely different lens? And that's where the conversation should start happening when you think about diversity. And when you think about equal opportunities, because I truly believe that talent is equally distributed, opportunities are not. And how are you going to provide those equal opportunities to everybody becomes the conversation.
That's a really good point, actually. And before we close out, just one more key question here, and that's, how does leadership change in that hybrid working world?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because now it's, you have to understand your team members differently. You have to understand what's going on in their in their personal and professional lives and kind of strike a balance over there. So giving your teams an opportunity to carve out the work schedules, flexible work schedules, but then how are you going to monitor them in terms of their performance? Are your KPIs changing then with this remote and hybrid workforce that is now part of your organization? Or how are you going to lead differently, right? How are you going to be inclusive differently? Each of your team members might have a different way of working with you and of working with other stakeholders. I have a team member who really needs to check in every day in the morning with me and feels neglected if I don't give them those 5 minutes in the morning and letting them know that everything is okay when they're working remotely, right? And then there are other team members whom I have who feel like, they're on the right path, and if they need me, they'll reach out to me. So I have to adjust my leadership style based on these individual requirements of my team members. And that's how we should start looking at it. It's not one size fits all. You have to actually change how you work with each of your team members now in this remote and hybrid workplace.
Agreed, and there's a lot of emotional intelligence needed there. For now, Rashim, just want to thank you so much for joining us here today, the HR Exchange Network for Corporate Learning Sprint. It's been an honour to have you here. So thank you, and for Skillsoft for partnering with us at this event. Audience, stay tuned. We're going live with AT&T now, looking at scaling up that learning function for continuous improvement. Hit the Join Now button. I'll meet you there. We're going live straight away. But for now, Rashim, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a wonderful, wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.